Well, you watch the other offense when you're watching the other defense. So you know what I mean? So like when you're watching all 12 of our now the playoff game and the championship game, all 14 of their games, you know, you're not only watching Texas on defense, but you're watching the teams that played against them. So you saw Georgia twice, you saw Arizona State last week, and then every other game that they played this year. So you know, you're looking at both. You know, you're looking at plays that, you know, maybe that is there a certain group of plays that really affected their defense, and try to put together as you try to put together your plan. So.
How much of a temptation is there to do too much of what other teams do well against someone versus what you do?
Yeah, I think that's the dilemma for all coaches. Like, hey, that's a really good play, but how does it fit into what we do? How does it fit into the skill sets of our players? You know, we're trying to play to our strengths. You know, and so you may say, hey, this is a good scheme, but it takes a certain type of player at this position to run it, and it may not be what we're in. It also may be something, you know, we don't do it all. So then, time on task. How many times would you have to run that play versus the varied looks that they give you? And you know, is it worth investing that time in that, or is it better to invest in time in some other things? So that's always part of your how much is too much. How much is too little? You know, you're always kind of going into these games and saying, you know, are we prepared for each situation? Do we have enough plays in those situations? Then do we have the requisite amount of time to practice them so you feel confident so when you call them in a game that our players can execute them? So.
Coach, what do you know about the Texas defensive coordinator?
I know Pete. You know, again faced him. Back when I was on the West Coast, and Pete was on the West Coast of Washington also. He was there with Chris Peterson at the time. Really sound, very, very well-coached team. Their co-defensive coordinator, Johnny Nansen, was on my staff when I was at UCLA, so I worked with Johnny before. So really well-coached. They don't give up anything cheap. I think they're the #1 red zone defense in the country, and that's for a reason. So and they played, you know, a big-time SEC schedule. So really, really well-coached team and a really good scheme.
Remember the last time you were calling the plays in a game and maybe your patience was tested simply because, as you just mentioned, the defense was adamant on not giving up anything cheap and they come through for every little thing.
Yeah, I think that happens in every game. You know, so I don't think there's one in particular. I think every week you know, offensively you want to try to score every drive you have, but there are some times that, you know, you go 3 and out and you're frustrated because, you know, you didn't execute on first down, so now you had a 2nd and long, and you didn't get half the distance on 2nd down, so now you got a long 3rd and long, and giving them an opportunity to get into their nickel or dime packages. And usually when you're trying to stay ahead of the sticks, so you can go from 1st and 10 to 2nd and 6 to 3rd and 3, and then 3rd and 3 is a lot easier than 3rd and 13. So, but that happens in every game itself. There's not one game where it was just every play you called worked. You know, it never happens that way.
We talked earlier with Coach Flood about coming up in small ball coaching, and he mentioned coaching against you at New Hampshire. And I think you and I have talked about this before, but do you think that coming up that way and coaching at that level is, what have you picked up from that moving forward to where you are now?
I think everybody has varied paths to how they get there. It's just, I think sometimes when you are at a lower level, you have to have more responsibilities. So, you know, not only are you the running back coach, but you may also be the recruiting coordinator and in charge of filming practice. So, you know, you pick up a lot of different things and a lot of different skill sets that maybe you wouldn't get if you were at a bigger school where you were just the GA for the old line and that's all you ever did. You didn't get exposed to. I think you get exposed to a lot more things, you know, when you have to coach at the lower levels, just because there aren't as many coaches, so you have to wear a lot of different hats. So I think that helps you in the long run in terms of your development. But there's pluses to it.
Where is Carnell? Obviously, he hadn't had necessarily touches the last 2 games, given the way Jeremiah and Mecca played. But on film, where is his value shown up the most?
I've always felt like we have 3 #1 receivers, you know, and that's the beautiful part of it is that if you're going to try to take away JJ and Mech, then that means that there's more opportunities for Carnell in those situations. So he's been outstanding. You know, I think the game we played against Northwestern was a heck of a game by him. So I think it's on a weekly basis. It just depends on how the defense is going to deploy their personnel and what they're trying to take away and what they're trying to give us. But if we have the weapons that we have out wide, you know, again, we feel like we got 3 #1 receivers out there.
Is Jeremiah Smith the best receiver you've coached so far?
Jeremiah is a once-in-a-lifetime talent, so I'm not into comparisons of who's this, who's that. He's a special player that, we're really, really fortunate to have him.
We've talked to you throughout the season about Will and his running. We haven't seen a ton of it, maybe a little bit more in the last game, but how prepared do you feel like he is to do that if needed?
Yeah, he's extremely prepared. I mean, Will's a tremendous athlete, so what we do is based upon what the defense gives us, and do you need to have him run? Are you into that? You look at winning the Penn State game. His legs were critical in that game, in the run game, down the stretch. So I think it just depends on how people are going to play you. But we have all the confidence in the world. If Will has to take it underneath his own, he's going to do a good job with it. Yep.
Coach, are you having fun this season?
What's that?
Are you having fun?
Yeah, winning is fun.
Enjoying
Yeah,
this
and
season?
I think the great part about it is this team, this group of players is special. The fact that you get to be around them every day. So I get to be around the quarterbacks every day and be in the meeting room with Will and Devin and Lincoln and Julian, and now we've added Tavian. So it's been awesome. It's a great coaching staff. It's an unbelievable group of players, and we hope we get to keep it together one more week. So to do that, we need to win this game against Texas.
As a coach, how do you kind of work to keep that focus on this game? I know it's been the mindset every single game you guys have had, but you are one win away from the end goal, right? Or playing for the end goal. How do you keep that focus as a coach with your guys?
I think it's simple. You just turn the tape on who you're playing. So I don't think you can discount anybody when you get to, when 12 teams made it, all 12 teams are legitimate contenders. And, you turned on the tape and you watched Tennessee and you were like, wow, that defensive line for Tennessee was impressive. So, that had our sole focus and attention that week and getting ready for them. And then you fast forward, and then now you got to go to the Rose Bowl and play against the #1 team in the country, who we had already played during the year and knew a lot about them. So, you get an opportunity to beat them, and now you get to go play Texas. And Texas played the SEC championship game. I've known Sark for a long time. I know how well coached their team is. So that part of it is it. The challenge is just the next game. We're not thinking about the end goal. We're not a results-oriented group. We're a process-oriented group. So our whole sole focus and attention is on preparing for Texas. We gotta get in, gotta get settled here tonight, and then we gotta have a really good Friday practice, which is tomorrow for us. It's a Friday, even though it's a Thursday, but it's a Friday type practice for us, and preparing for Texas, and then see if we get the opportunity to play one more time. But that's all we really talk about is just Texas, because if you don't take care of business on Friday night in the Cotton Bowl, then there's not going to be any more length in our season.
Chip, how does Texas's defensive speed compare to some of what you guys have seen this year?
I think they're favorable to, we thought the same thing when we were playing Tennessee. I think their front starts with their front. It's not only fast, it's big, and I think probably bigger than some of the defenses that we face. So I think how do we handle those guys? Collins inside, Simmons on the outside has got 9 or 10 sacks as a freshman rusher. So they got some speed. Anthony Hill can really run at linebacker, and then the secondary they get the Jim Thorpe Award winner. And I think the two safeties are outstanding. Maybe as good a pair of safeties as we've seen and faced. So it's legit. But you don't get to this point in the season where there's 4 teams left and say, hey, these guys, they're good on one side but not good on the other. I think they're really, really good on the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, and Sark has always been known for that. But this defense is legit. I think they're first in the country in red zone defense. In 134 teams, that's pretty good. So, it's going to be a battle.
Brian said, whenever we talked to him, I don't know what day of the week it is, but this time of the year as a head coach, he has a little more time I think he said more time for ball, like more time to get his hands, I think, a little more into the game planning of things. How has that been, I guess, since the playoffs started, to have him more involved, I guess, in putting the game plan together?
Yeah, he's
or has he
involved.
always been involved? Yeah.
I don't know if he's more involved. He's been involved from the jump, since the beginning. So he's all about ball, from whether it was week 1 when we were getting ready for the opener against Akron or this one. That's him. He's driven that way, and he's always all about football. So I don't think he's more involved, but he's always been very, very involved in every aspect, in special teams, defense, and offense. He handles it all and does an unbelievable job with it.
You mentioned Tavian earlier. Obviously, he's not a part of this game, but what can he get out of this time with you guys?
I think it's a great experience for all the newcomers. They've gotten on campus They get a chance to travel to the Rose Bowl with us. They're practicing with us now. They're a little bit separate in terms of what they're doing with our strength and conditioning staff, and they're not getting every rep in practice just because we're not going to throw them out there. They don't have the basis of what our other players have had, but they can get involved in individual drills, and we've done some things with them, and it's I think it's going to help them, especially when we start spring practice, in April. It won't be the first time he's ever been on the field. It won't be the first time he's ever heard a drill. He understands kind of how meetings work. But Tavian's unique because he was probably at 11 of our 15 spring practices because he was a local recruit. So it seems like he's been around for a long time. I know he officially signed in December, but it feels like he's been with the quarterbacks and in the quarterback room for a long time now.
And you guys have had a few of the transfer portal guys with you too. Obviously, they're further ahead than the incoming freshmen, but does that also give them a bit of a leg up?
Same, I think just getting exposed to terminology, understanding kind of how a day works, and what it's like and what the flow of our days are like, what our meetings are like, what our walkthroughs are like, and then obviously what our training sessions are like. So I think it's beneficial to all those guys because there'll just be a lot more familiarity when we start back up with that group in the spring.
Chip, throughout the season, Will's kind of